But every Thursday we throw it back. Old school and 50 hits, reminisce. And it was based on a meme, just a meme.
Yeah, simple meme.
A simple meme. It was like, hey, what did you miss out on in your childhood? When you look back, what do you feel you missed out on? And again, coming from Jersey, it's almost a badge of honor if you're from Jersey and you talk about your times at Action Park, because it was covered in documentaries and people are like, yo, man, you're from Jersey. Did you ever go? I saw this documentary about Action Park and how all these people died there and how unsafe it was. And I remember seeing the commercials all the time growing up on the East Coast and Jersey. My mom wouldn't let me go. Simple as that. You're not going there, Steven. It wasn't even like a discussion. I wasn't allowed. It was unsafe. I think my mom loved me too much to allow me to go. Simple as that. But I always felt like I missed out. And even now as an adult, people ask me, and I feel like embarrassed to say, yeah, I didn't go. Never went.
Really?
Yeah, never went.
I've been to Action Park multiple times.
Did you? Yeah, and Rich was from Long Island.
It was very unsafe.
It was super unsafe. It was known for being like extremely dangerous and people dying there.
They had documentaries, like you said. What did you feel like you missed out on? It doesn't need to be sports. It could be anything. I wrote down a few things. You brought up last hour. My parents are in the mindset of like, oh, we're not going to let them play football. It's dangerous. So I watched not one really good quarterback come out of my town. I'm not saying I would have been the quarterback, but I pitched, had a good arm. I'm 6 foot. Like, to me, it was there for the taking.
You could have been that guy.
I could have been that guy. So football's on my list. I missed out on that.
Tom Brady over here.
Instead of just looking like an NFL punter, you could have actually been a quarterback.
Exactly.
Instead of being treated like Bobby Brady, you could have been Tom Brady.
Yeah. You know, see?
Yeah.
I wrote down a couple things that I feel like I missed out on. Because my parents were...
Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
You know, I peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They never gave me peanut butter and jelly.
By the way, you can't just brush over that one. I started working with Rich in our late 20s, right? This dude had never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So one of our first radio bits was, you never had what? You gotta have. So we had him eat one on the air because he was deprived of peanut butter his entire life.
True story.
My first day working with you guys, I was poor, and I brought in a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
I made fun of Spot.
He made fun of me, and then he was like, "Wait a second, I don't think I've ever had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich."
And we're like, "What?"
Next day, I brought him peanut butter and jelly.
So we made him eat one, and his life has never been the same. But you missed out on that when you were a kid.
I had a dad who, and now he has every streaming service possible. But my dad was one of those 80s dads that said we didn't need cable TV.
I feel like you missed out on so much.
So when Covino and Spot and Danny and guys make references to MTV and that video and this video and Mark Goodman and all the old VJs and all that, I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm going to have to take your word for it. I missed out on early MTV.
Think about how influential MTV was, or cable TV, not just MTV, but cable TV was in your life growing up.
But there'll be a movie.
It was like playing outside, video games, and cable TV.
Yeah, but
Rich had no cable TV.
There'll be movies that were in heavy rotation on like HBO, and Spot and Covino and the guys will be like, oh, that movie was on all the time. And I'm like, yeah, for you. I watch like crappy network stuff.
And to be honest, it sounds not that significant, but there is a bit of a disconnect sometimes because Rich didn't have cable. That's wild when you think about it.
What else do you feel like you missed out on from your childhood? I'll give you one more and then we'll go around the room. I want to get this out here because we're talking about baseball and football. I never went to like a cool baseball or football camp.
Same.
My parents told me that, parents who send their kids to camp just don't love their kids.
My parents told me the same thing, I swear to God. And I believed them. I did. They never sent me to a camp.
You want to go to camp? You know who goes to camp? Parents who want to get rid of their kids.
Parents who don't love their kids.
I'm like, oh, they really brainwashed me. Looking back, it's like you just didn't want to spend the money on it.
You wanted to go to Camp Rock.
So, again, things you missed out on or you felt you missed out on as a kid. Mike, who runs this place, before he left, he said...
Who?
Mike, he said anything that was considered violent was not allowed in his home or in his upbringing, and he wasn't allowed squirt guns,
cap guns, anything.
So he doesn't know the beauty of that hot, warm plastic you would drink.
Was he raised by
from the squirt gun in the
months?
summer? Yeah, but get this: not only did he not have squirt guns, as he called them, or water pistols, right? He wasn't allowed to watch Three Stooges. which means to me he probably couldn't watch the Looney Tunes. Anything that was deemed violent. If he couldn't watch Mo poke Curly in the eyes, I don't think he was watching, Beavis
and Butthead.
Or, like I said, Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry. So he had a no violence policy at his house.
I could kind of relate, not with the violence, because for some reason my mom didn't care if we killed each other. But as far as horror, she had a no horror movie policy. So
are you using one syllable there?
Horror.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She didn't let us watch the horror movies either.
Okay.
Yeah. So both fit there, Rich.
Wow.
But,
So
you couldn't watch scary movies.
No Freddy Krueger in the Danny G house?
I was just going to say.
If I were you, Danny, I'd just say scary movies.
But kids would talk about, Jason and Freddy.
And you'd have to nod your head.
Yeah.
I had my mom.
I saw
would
those movies
sneak that.
when I got into my 20s.
Right. I would sneak that anyway. But I did have girlfriends and wives or wife that had
Wives.
no supernatural, spiritual, creepy, scary movies because you're summoning just a weird energy in the house. And there's part of me that does believe that a little bit, to be honest.
It's like some people who don't celebrate Halloween. My mom didn't. She thought it was.
Wow.
Yeah, she thought.
So you missed out on the parades as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh, Danny was the guy.
I didn't mind.
Oh, you missed out, man.
You missed out, Danny. What's up, Dan Byer?
Two things. First of all, Notre Dame took the opening kickoff for the second half back for a touchdown. So they've scored 17 points in the span of about 55 seconds of game time.
It's 23.
They scored 10 in the final minute of the first half and then took the ensuing kickoff on the start of the second half back for a score. So it's 20-3 Notre Dame over Georgia.
DB, you're so right because there was less than a minute left in the first half and it was 3-3.
Yes.
And now we're a minute into the third quarter and it's 20-3.
Yes, and now Georgia likely becomes one-dimensional with a backup quarterback. To Rich's point of when you're younger, why shoot a three when you can get a good 15-footer, especially when you're 5'10" like me? Who would need a three-point shot back then?
Yeah.
Or it's now just basically the only thing that they do in the NBA or anywhere else, and 15-foot jump shots are basically extinct in any level of basketball.
So Dan Byer has a sweet mid-range jumper.
Yeah, why don't you? Hey, pump fake. And then take that step and pull up from 15 for that nice two-point shot right at the corner of the free throw line.
Hey, you're one of a kind in 2025.
Why
very,
not?
very Hoosiers.
Yes.
I thought of another one. Now, this is a little later in life, but we're talking about things we missed out on. Would you say it's also maybe because you just didn't know any better? What's usually the reason? Your parents didn't expose you, or maybe you didn't know any better?
Probably a little of both.
I'll give you one that I don't think anyone in this room, as far as I know, took advantage of. If your parents or you or student loans, however you got through college, no one that I know at least took advantage of how studying abroad was the same price.
Dude, bam, that's a great one.
To me, it's
when I look back, I feel I missed out on that.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
That wasn't even an option, especially
I
we're
studied
from the
several
East Coast.
broads in college.
Yeah, maybe you did, Spot. But most East Coast kids,
No.
and again, I'm just speaking, maybe it's the same for you, Danny, I don't know, but leaving the East Coast seemed out of the question, let alone the country. Let alone abroad. What?
If you were paying tuition, like I said, if you were paying loans, your parents, however you got through
I
school.
think it's maybe how we were raised, though.
But
we didn't come from a traveling family.
Yeah, same here.
I
never left the country as a kid. But to think that, hey, if you're going to college, hey, in the spring, instead of going to the local university for practically the same amount of money, I could go to, I don't know, Barcelona for 6 months.
Based on that, Rich, what an experience. And now, we encourage those things to our kids, but I feel like I missed out on that.
Even a warmer climate. We all stayed in the Northeast.
How about just traveling in general? Don Martin, one of our bosses, remember when he was here that day telling all of us about how he made sure to take his kids overseas?
Yeah.
Growing up, he took them to lots of different countries to experience a lot of different cultures because he wanted them to see something other than where they just were going to school.
Furthest I went was Epcot Center. So my dad, took us on that tour around
we
the
went
world.
to Hershey Park in Pennsylvania.
No, the closest I got was Olive Garden, a tour of Italy.
We took a drive when I was a little kid to Montana. It might as well have been the Alps because I felt like I was in a different country.
No, that's true. It's something we feel that we may have missed out on. And Rich, luckily this isn't my story.
Yeah.
But when people ask about our career, I feel like the one advantage I always had and they missed out on was an internship. Because people always say, how did you end up doing that, man? I'm like, because I did an internship and I got involved at a young age. And I always feel like the internship for me was the one thing that I did and had that some people missed out on. Because it got your foot in the door. So that's not my answer, but I imagine that could be an answer for a lot of people. Like, man, I really missed out on an internship because people always wanted experience. People always wanted to get their foot in the door. That was your foot in the door. That was my foot in the door.
Let's go to your feedback now. Clint in Vegas. Clint, on a Throwback Thursday, just a random meme. What did you feel like you missed out on as a kid? What's up?
COVINO Rich.
Hey, buddy.
Big fan, guys. Big fan.
Oh, thanks, man.
No worries. I'm a truck driver here in Vegas, and I listen to you all the time.
Thanks, bro.
No worries. But listen to this. So in 1994, I was 18. I had an old guy. His name is Mr. Teppert. He was 84 years old. He owned 100 acres in Aspen, covered in trees he couldn't sell. All he owed was $10,000 for it. He offered it to me. I didn't have $10,000.
Oh,
Imagine what that is worth
Exactly.
right now.
you know, Danny G, we have a
Millions.
buddy. We have a buddy, and this is you know how we all have peculiar friends. We know a guy in New York. He's a lawyer. We call him Sean the lawyer, but he's an odd guy, not your typical lawyer. Like every time you talk to this guy, he's somewhere else. Like, dude, where are you? And he's always like up to some weird situation.
Mm-hmm.
He's the type of guy that would stop and talk to a stranger in the street that was trying to sell him something. He got pulled into a crypto seminar in the 2000s. And he tells the story. He's like, yeah, they were trying to sell me on Bitcoin, and they were telling me to buy it. It was like 20 cents. And he's like, nah, I'm just not feeling it. But he was one of those guys that, you know, you hear these stories of like
the opportunity.
You know those guys you hear like that bought a pizza with 100 Bitcoin? He could have been one of those guys. And he's like, nah, I just told them. They asked me if I wanted a ton of Bitcoin for like $100, and I said, no, thanks.
I got one sport-related and music-related.
Missed out on things.
Yeah, missed out on. One's not my fault, technically. I'll say when I was a kid in high school, Nirvana really never came around the East Coast. Maybe once before they hit it big, before anyone really knew who they were. Never got a chance to see Nirvana. Always sort of haunted me as a rock fan. And that's a band that had huge influence on my life and career path, right? Like when that grunge era hit, that changed everything. And I never saw Nirvana, ever, right? So I have that. Man, I feel like I really missed out on that. And as a sports fan, who, you know, we all grew up wearing starter jackets in the 90s, hanging posters in our room of all our heroes. Every kid, there was few athletes that were universally loved, guys like Bo Jackson, but Michael Jordan's definitely one of them. Everybody wanted to be like Mike, and I never saw Michael Jordan play live, ever. You know, we all had the opportunity.
Yeah, but that's acceptable.
If your opportunity.
But if your parents weren't bringing you to the arenas, then that's not really on you.
Maybe we didn't beg enough. We missed out on that opportunity, that bragging right.
Yeah, but I have a question. Does this conversation extend to things that are out of your control?
Meaning, that could have been in my control, dude. When did he retire? Could have went to see Michael Jordan
the second,
play.
You're right.
Could have saw him as a wizard.
Yeah,
well, I
I
was
could
going
have
to
still
say
saw
also,
him, right?
you were in college. Think of the second three-peat ended in the late 90s. You were in college.
Yeah, that's totally on me.
Well, Rich, the meme says, what do you feel like you missed out on?
I feel like I missed out on being able to say
it doesn't
that
matter
I saw him live.
if it was out of your control. What did you miss out on?
I'll tell you something I missed out on.
Dude, we were alive in the time of one of the all-time GOATs. And we didn't go out of our way.
I know what you're saying.
To the Garden to see him or something.
But do you think teenage Steve Covino in the late 90s was like, yo, my priority is to see history? You were probably thinking about grabbing a butt cheek or something.
Yeah, thank God I didn't miss out on that.
And speaking of which, I feel like, and luckily, met my wife. She's amazing. I was just a year or so away.
Oh, this sounds juicy.
A year or so away from when dating apps really took over. I feel like when I know all my single friends will be like, yeah, it's overrated. Don't worry about it.
Oh, it is.
But I never got to swipe left and right. When I see my single friends like, oh, look at her. You swipe.
Here you go.
There's a part of me that's like, oh, knowing me and knowing my weaknesses, that would have been a
Spot's
disaster.
on a bunch of apps. Spot, just let him swipe one
Hey, you
time.
want to swipe one day?
I'll swipe for you.
That's miserable.
Yeah,
You don't want to do that. You don't want to live that life.
Yeah, but you know what's fun? Guys like you that are in that swiping world tell me, like, yeah, it's not as cool as you think. But in my mind, I'm like, so you tell me, like, I can just
gotta tell you,
swipe
Rich,
left and right if I want to,
I did it
hook
for
up with
a
these
little,
girls.
I
Just
did it
wanna
for
look.
a little over a year in between my divorce, and it's empty feeling.
So empty.
Unless maybe you're in the right mind space and mindset for it, but I felt dirty.
Also, I'm sorry. Also, Rich, I was going to say the guys that were married when I was single swiping like that, they always made it sound like the booty just gets delivered to your door.
It's so easy.
Automatic. Oh, so easy. Can't believe it's so easy for you right now.
Ding dong. Oh, booty's
Yeah,
here.
it's
Come
doorsmash.com.
Make sure when you do it sober. Don't do it when you're drunk.
Door smash.
Because then
That's
you'll
what-
wake up the next day and go, why did I swipe right on this? Oh, my God.
But I can see people feeling like they missed out on that for sure.
Well, because in my mind, I had to do it as Apollo Creed would say, the hard way. I had to go up to girls and talk to them, be like a grown ass man. The idea of a single guy being like, she's hot, yes, 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 and just swiping to me is like, a guy. Let's just call it a guy that's all revved up a lot of times. That's a dream, I think.
You know, on that Ashley Madison documentary they did,
Yeah.
then they said like 99% of the entries were guys. Like you think
Yeah.
it's like 50-50, but to your point as well, I think there are some guys who think, yeah, I'll hop on and it'll just be, just be flooded with whatever. I'm sure there's an empty feeling of dirtiness, but there's probably an also empty feeling of not getting any sort of notifications on anything.
Like, think about how you feel if you post a cool picture or video and you're not getting the likes you want. Imagine going back onto, let me go back onto Tinder, and it's like, no matches.
Yeah, this guy, he watched it, but he didn't like it. And it was like, you jerk.
Rich,
It was empty.
I feel like I missed out on as far as our childhood.
He missed.
As far as childhood, again, it's about aging out of things.
Yeah.
Right before, I aged out of it. I was already riding a BMX bike, and I was already riding around the neighborhood and
Yeah.
stuff. But you see the other little kids in the neighborhood, they were rolling up on their Power Wheels, like on their Bigfoot Power Wheels. You know what I'm talking about?
You never had a motorized
Never
thing?
had.
Oh.
No, but I was like, man, I just missed out on that. That's kind of cool. I wish I had that.
All right, let's go to Jen in Michigan. Jen, what did you miss out on?
Well, in ninth grade, I started in a program called Upward Bound. I may have missed out on having summers, spending time with friends, but I did get to do things I wouldn't have gotten to do if I didn't join Upward Bound, because I got to go to Canada. I got to do things I would have not been able to if I hadn't have joined Upward Bound.
Thank you, Jen. You made me think of some other stuff too. As a parent now, I'm a parent, right? So you made me think of the things that I'm kind of regretful of, because I feel like my daughter is missing out on things, but it's just a sign of the times. Like, she doesn't freely have sleepovers the way we did growing up, because you just assume in today's world that everybody's a creep, and honestly, I feel like, she's missing out on that a little bit.
She's 15 and never had a slumber party?
She's had like a few, but I'd had friends that would sleep over my house every weekend almost.
Yeah,
right?
watch like horror
Yeah.
movies.
But again, she's a young girl, and it's a different
Yes.
time, and you don't know all their parents, and I don't know if her dad's a creep or not. Where do you want to stay? And just the freedoms that we had of going outside and wandering around town and riding your bike off into another town. And I feel like my kid's missing out on those things today.
I think
And I
that-
feel bad about that as a parent.
I think that's understandable though, because we have a 3-year-old, and my wife have talked about it in the future. There's not going to be sleepovers, but the flip side of that as well is we're not going to have any either, because you don't want to be the family that only has the sleepovers at your place.
Yeah.
And there's something super weird, bro. So our kid's going to grow up without it. It's just not going to happen. And yeah, some of our best times growing up were with those, but yeah, we're not going to let it happen.
Listen.
Unless
I'm not
you're
saying-
extremely close with the other families or their or their family members and cousins. Even
yeah.
still, though, like, you don't know who to trust anymore. You're so scared.
I'm listen. I'm not saying go around willy nilly trusting everyone, but there's got to be a sense of like,
That's how weird things happen, dude.
But by the way, I don't want to change subjects, but did you see this video of this woman who got arrested because her 10-year-old kid walked into town to go to a store?
Yes.
It's
I
like a
saw it,
viral
yeah.
story. How many times when you were 10 did you all the comments were people like, I used to go buy my parents smokes when I was 10.
Oh,
Like
really?
this woman
Yeah, she said
was
they're-
handcuffed because
Oh,
her
wow.
kid walked into town
Yeah.
at 10 years old and they're like, yeah, child endangerment. She's like, yeah, but he like walked into town. You would get on your bike and just sort of like do your own thing, and that's just right. That's a thing of the past.
thing of the past. So I feel like my kid is missing out, but you know what? They'll never be able to live the life that you did. Like whatever you had doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have those same memories, those same type of things. Different time.
It's so
Different
weird,
place.
though. We would ride our bikes to San Bernardino to get a pack of gum. Like,
Yeah,
you'd find yourself a couple of towns over.
Danny, I've described this feeling before, and I think you just nailed it. Do you remember, and it could be a young girl too, but when you were a young boy, do you remember riding your bike and that feeling you got when you're like, all right, I think I'm one town too far.
You're not recognizing the
you're like,
stores.
all right, it's getting a little dicey. I don't know where I am. I don't recognize things, and my mom would probably not want me to be this far, but you would almost push it like, all right, I'm one town too far. It's going to take me a minute to get home.